Have you ever felt the breath of something ancient watching you, even when you are alone in the snow? Have you stood on a path of old footprints, only to realize none of them are yours? There are places in the high Himalayas where the wind carries more than cold. It carries voices no longer human. It carries silence that remembers. And sometimes when the moon rises over the white ridges and the shadows fall just right, the mountain itself seems to pause listening, not for danger, but for something returning. In such a place, where the pine forests bow to the higher ranges, there lived a hunter named Tashi. He was a quiet man, born of the mist, hardened by the snow. His beard was wheat with age and frost, and his eyes had grown weary with years of searching. For Tashi did not hunt animals, he hunted silence, disappearances, whispers. It was said his father had vanished, chasing the same silence, high up near the glacier tongue of Chomo Yarlung, where no trail lasts more than a season, and the snow moves as if dreaming. One morning, the village awoke to find their goats missing. Again. The tracks led north, where the ridges fold into one another like sleeping giants, and Tashi was called upon. Not because he was the best hunter, but because he was the only one who never returned empty-handed, even if what he brought back wasn't always seen. He set off before first light, wrapped in wool and memory. His breath steamed into the dark. The prayer flags flapped above him on the ridge, each one a voice of the past muttering in the wind. He whispered a blessing under his breath, not for safety, but for remembrance. The snow grew deeper as he climbed. By midday the trail vanished, but something else remained. Not tracks, but weight. A heaviness in the air as if he were being watched from beneath the ice itself. He reached the mouth of a cave just as the sky turned to pearl. It yawned wide in the cliffside, like a sleeping mouth, rimmed with icicles that rang faintly in the breeze. Tashi stood still for a long time. Then he stepped in. The cold changed as he entered. It was no longer the sharp breath of winter. It was older, still, heavy like water held in stone. Inside, the cave narrowed, then opened into a chamber that seemed too wide for the mountain's shape. Along the walls were ridges, shapes, etchings, not of tool or hand, but of movement. As if something had lived here, large and slow and sorrowful. At the center of the chamber lay a circle of stones, each one worn smooth as if from long-forgotten rituals. Atop one was a tuft of white hair, thick, coarse, impossible to mistake. Tashi crouched low, eyes narrowing. He did not fear the Yeti. He had heard stories all his life, but fear had left him long ago, replaced by something softer, ache. He was not here to conquer. He was here to understand. And then, a sound. Not growl, not howl. A breath, inhaled, exhaled, like a child sleeping behind a curtain. He turned, and there on the far side of the chamber stood the figure. It was not monstrous. It was tall, wrapped in long pale fur, the color of moonlit ash. Its eyes glowed faintly, not with hunger, but memory, old memory. It watched him, unmoving. Tashi did not speak. He merely bowed, low and long. And as he did, the air in the chamber seemed to shift, not colder but clearer, as if a veil had lifted. The Yeti stepped forward. Its movement was slow, deliberate, almost regal. In its hand, it held something, a string of beads, worn and broken, a mala of an old monk, like the kind Tashi's father once wore. And suddenly, Tashi's knees gave way. He knelt, hands trembling, eyes filling. For in that moment, he understood. The creature before him was not beast, but keeper, a guardian of grief, a protector of memory too painful to remain in the world above. It had known his father. It had mourned him. Perhaps it still did. The Yeti extended the beads, laying them gently at Tashi's feet. Its eyes did not blink. They simply remained, full of something beyond language. And then, without sound, it turned and vanished deeper into the cavern. Tashi sat there for a long time, He held the beads to his chest and wept, not with fear but with release, for he had not found the monster. He had found what the world had forgotten: reverence. By the time he left the cave, the snow had begun to fall again, quietly. The world outside felt softer. The sky above seemed to watch him now, as if it too remembered. When Tashi returned to the village, he did not speak of what he saw. He simply returned the missing goats, who had come back on their own, calm and unshaken. He lit a butter lamp for his father that night, and one more for the guardian in the ice. And far above the village, behind the glacier veil, a slow, deep breath stirred and slept again. And further still, there is one more story. Have you ever seen clouds curling around a peak, moving not with the wind but as if pulled by something unseen? Have you heard thunder in a cloudless sky and felt your chest echo back the sound? Not from above but from within. There are mountains so high, the stars rest their weight upon them. And in those high places, the air is not empty. It sings, and sometimes it remembers a song that has not been sung in 1,000 years. A song shaped like a serpent. A song shaped like light. It is said that in the heights of Mount Lungtar, where even the eagles do not fly, a serpent of wind and sky curls through the heavens. They call it the sky-serpent, the one who brings messages between the peaks and the stars. Not many believe this now. The stories have thinned, like breath in high places. But still, sometimes in the hush between lightning and echo, the monks of Simo Monastery look up and wonder. Rinzin was one of those monks, young, unshaven, clumsy with chance, but always listening. He had grown up in the valley, where barley grew low and prayer flags tethered the wind. When his parents passed in a rock slide, he had wandered up to the monastery in silence. They took him in, gave him a robe, and told him, "Learn the wind's language. That is enough." Years passed. Rinzin learned to sweep, to chant, to light the lamps with calm fingers, but his heart was never still. Each night, while others slept beneath thick quilts, he would sneak onto the roof of the prayer hall and lie on his back, eyes wide to the stars. And some nights he saw it, a ribbon of light curling silently through the sky. No sound, no trail, only shimmer. It moved like no bird, no plane, no cloud. It moved like intention. They say you see what you want, the elder monk Dori once told him. Dreams make shapes of light, but dreams do not leave scorch marks in the grass. One morning, after a night of strange sightings, the lower pastures woke to withered leaves and blackened barley. The villagers blamed frost, but there had been no cold. The herders blamed the sky, but offered no prayer. Only Rinzin said nothing, for he had seen it. The tail of the serpent, curling through mist, pulsing with forgotten color. That night, as rain whispered against the tiles, he slipped away from his bed and climbed the path toward the peak. No one saw him go. The trail was old, carved in stone, mostly forgotten. Halfway up, the winds thickened, not loud, but deliberate, as if speaking to itself. The higher he climbed, the harder it became to walk upright. His breath turned thin. The prayer flags here were sun-bleached and shredded, forgotten blessings hanging on by a thread. At last, the path vanished. Before him rose the summit of Lungtar, a sharp ridge of black rock dusted in old snow, glowing faintly in the moonlight. And above it, in the trembling sky, movement, a shimmer, long and slow, like breath curling in the dark, a ripple of something vast, spinning lazily through the stars. He stepped forward. The wind hit him like a wave. He dropped to his knees, gripping the cold rock, and then it happened. A voice, not heard but felt, coiled into his mind like smoke. Not language, memory. It was as if the mountain was remembering itself, as if the air were telling him what it once knew. He saw visions, monks long vanished, offering incense to the clouds. A dragon made of smoke and sky descending from the stars, winding through peaks like a ribbon, seeking home. bells ringing from the summit, not by hands, but by thunder, and eyes not cruel but sorrowful watching the world forget. He collapsed. When Rinzin awoke, it was dawn. The sky was pale and empty. His robe was damp with frost, but in his hand, closed tight without memory of how, lay a single scale, no larger than a fingernail, but iridescent and warm to the touch. He staggered back to the monastery. They found him sleeping before the altar, curled like a child. When they shook him awake, he said only this: "The wind remembers. We have stopped listening." The elder monk examined the scale, turning it slowly between two fingers. Then, with great care, he placed it in the prayer wheel. "Let the mountain speak," he said. From that day, Rinzin no longer chased the stars. He tended the garden, sang softly to the wind, and lit lamps for clouds. When children asked him about dragons, he would smile and say, "What is the sky, if not a serpent of breath and light? And above Mount Lungta, on certain nights, a shimmer still curls through the heavens, slower than time, older than sound. Some say it is illusion, but some still listen. But listen, there is yet another name whispered in the wind. Have you ever walked across land that hums faintly beneath your feet as though something ancient slumbers just below? Have you heard bells that no longer ring yet still echo in the wind? In the folds of the Himalayas, where valleys lie forgotten between shadowed peaks, there are places not marked on any map. Places the earth itself remembers, even if no one else does. They are not ruins, for they were never destroyed. They are hidden not by accident, but by silence. One such place is called the monastery, that sank into stone. It is not spoken of loudly in the villages. When asked, elders merely shake their heads. Some say it stood too high and shone too brightly. Some say its chants called something down from the sky. Others say the mountain, jealous of its holiness, swallowed it whole. Lamo had never heard these stories. Not truly. She was a cartographer, young, clever, carrying a battered notebook and a compass gifted by her grandmother. She came from the western valleys, where river maps were still passed down in song, and the paths changed with the rains. But Alamo believed in ink, in certainty, in naming what was unknown. She had come east to chart the highlands, lands where no surveys had been made, where trails vanished into mist. One morning, as she passed through a village ringed by juniper, she was given tea by an old woman with clouded eyes. "You walk the map like it will never bite you," the woman said. But not all places wish to be found. That night, by the fire, Lamo opened the silk sash left to her by her grandmother, something she had carried always but never unfurled. Inside, to her astonishment, was a faint ink drawing, a circle of peaks, a path carved in dots, and at its heart, a symbol she had never seen, the monastery. No name, no script, just silence. The path began near where she now stood. Without fully knowing why, she followed it. For 3 days she hiked through thin pine forests and across old landslide scars, until the trees thinned and the rocks grew strange, smooth, almost polished, though no river had passed. On the 4th morning, mist gathered thick and low. As she climbed a ridge outlined in her grandmother's sketch, she heard them bells. Not clear, not loud, but persistent, deep, from below. But there was nothing below, only a wide, flat plateau of bare stone, smooth and veined like marble. No building, no ruins, no shrine. And yet, the bells. She stepped onto the stone. The humming began at once, not in her ears but in her ribs, a low resonance, like something remembered her. Slowly she walked to the center of the plateau. Her breath shortened. Not from altitude, but from awe. There, etched faintly in the stone beneath her feet, were the outlines of walls, courtyards, prayer halls, a monastery, pressed into the very mountain. She knelt, tracing a shape with her finger. It felt warm. The sun had not touched it. The ground beneath her trembled. not with quake, but with breath, as though something below had stirred. And then the fog rolled in, thick, swift, white as milk. When it cleared, the world had changed. Before her stood a doorway. It was not carved into the mountain. It was of the mountain, seamless, tall, dark, silent. She approached. With a trembling hand, she pushed it open. The world dimmed. She stood in a corridor of stone, walls covered in murals, but the figures were not monks. They were shadows, hooded, floating. Their eyes were stark. She moved slowly, lantern raised. The air was still, but not dead. It felt held. At the end of the corridor was a vast chamber, domed and hollow. At its center sat monks in meditation, dozens of them, stone-colored, unmoving, their robes frozen in time. She gasped, stepped closer. They were not statues. They were real, frozen in prayer, eyes half closed, lips parted mid-chant, preserved not by time, but by something else. As if the monastery had paused them, as if they had given themselves to silence itself. And in their midst, a dais, upon it, a great bell, cracked, yet gleaming. Beside it, a scroll. She approached. The scroll bore no words, only a spiral, drawn in ink that shimmered like water. She touched it, and the mountain sang. Not aloud, but within. A long tone, pure and aching, surged through her. Images filled her mind. A monastery whose chants had risen too high, calling down something vast and veiled. A moment of awe, then silence. The mountain, to protect the world, or to protect itself, wrapped them in stone. And the monks had agreed, had knelt, had surrendered their voices to preserve balance. Lama dropped the scroll. Her hands shook. She staggered back through the corridor, through the doorway and into sunlight. The plateau was empty once more. No door, no etchings, no sound, only her. In her pack, the scroll remained. When she returned to the village, the old woman with the clouded eyes was waiting. "You found it," she said softly. "Now leave it be." Lama said nothing. She never mapped that path, never traced those peaks again. But in her home, she kept the scroll wrapped in the old sash, and sometimes when the wind blew just right, she heard the bell ring once more, low, deep, remembering. But the mists hold another tale. Have you ever stood at the edge of a world wrapped in white, where every sound is swallowed and even your breath feels borrowed? Have you watched the snow fall with no wind, drifting like memory rather than weather? Some places do not exist on maps. They live in the hush between stories, found only when you are not looking, and lost when you try to return. In the high ravines of the eastern ranges, beyond the pine skeletons and the bone-colored cliffs, lies such a place. They call it the Hollow of Mirrors, and at its heart walks the Snow Witch. It is said she is neither ghost nor goddess, but something in between. She wears a shawl of starlight and a crown of frost. Some say she was once a woman who gazed too long into her own sorrow and became the snow itself. Others say she is older than even the glaciers, a forgotten deity who weeps for those who search for what should not be found. Pema had heard these tales since childhood. When the winters grew sharp and the wind howled through cracks in the shutters, her grandmother would whisper, "Never chase echoes in the snow, child." That's how she calls. But Pema had stopped believing in such things. She had lost her daughter in the avalanche the year before, a slip of white, a tremble in the slope, and then silence. The search party found nothing. No body, no track, only one pink shoe, resting oddly clean on a stone. Since then Pema lived like the mountain, still on the outside, but forever shifting inside. Then, one evening a boy came running from the forest, eyes wide with fear. He spoke of a pale figure, walking the ridge, barefoot, her shadow trailing the wrong way. He said she left no prints in the snow, only frost on bark, and the scent of lilies where none grew. Emma's hands shook as she packed her satchel. She took the pink shoe, wrapped in cloth, and followed the boy's path at dawn. The world grew quieter. The higher she climbed, pine branches thinned, and the snow deepened until her boots sank to the calf. Yet still she walked. At midday, the wind stopped, the air flattened, and before her opened a narrow ravine, smooth walls of ice on either side, narrowing like a throat. She stepped in. Sound vanished. Even her breath felt muffled. At the heart of the hollow stood a mirror. It was not hanging. It had not been placed. It simply was, tall, without frame, smooth as frozen water. Snow fell around it, but never on it. And there, before it, stood a figure. The Snow Witch. She did not turn. Her hair was long and silver, moving as if underwater. Her shawl was stitched from mist, and her hands were bare despite the cold. Pema approached slowly. The pink shoe trembled in her grasp. "I want to see her," she whispered. The Snow Witch did not move, but the mirror did. Ripples stirred across its surface, and Pema saw, not her reflection, but a child, standing on a ridge, laughing. Alive. Is she? The vision shifted. The child ran. Snow fell. The mountain trembled. Then darkness. The mirror rippled again. This time, Pema saw herself, holding her daughter, weeping, as a warm wind stirred their hair. The valley behind them bloomed with flowers she had never seen. Then nothing. What is true? Pema cried. What is memory? What is dream? The Snow Witch turned. Her face was veiled, but Pema felt her gaze not with eyes but with gravity, and in that silent moment, the snow rose in spirals, lifting gently around them. The witch placed one hand upon the mirror, and Pema saw everything. The avalanche, the stillness, the brief flicker of life held within the snow. A choice, not of death, but of turning. A passage into something deeper. Her daughter had not died. She had crossed into a place where sorrow could not follow, into stillness. Pema fell to her knees. Tears froze before they touched the snow. The witch stepped forward, silent as breath, and placed a single fingertip to Pema's forehead. Not a blessing, a remembering. When Pema opened her eyes again, the mirror was gone. The hollow empty. No figure, no trace, only the pink shoe, now warm in her hand. She walked back in silence, the wind soft against her cheeks. That night, she lit a lamp, not for mourning, but for release. And some say, on certain nights, a mother can be seen walking the ridge, hand in hand with no one, smiling gently, as though the snow has given something back, and the breath of the mountain carries yet another memory. Have you ever watched shadows move in ways the light does not explain? Flickering where no flame burns, spinning when all else is still. There are dances, older than music, steps shaped from silence, woven from breath. They are not meant for the eye. They are meant for the soul. And in the deeper valleys of the Himalayas, where fog clings low and the moon stays long, it is said one such dancer still moves, alone, beneath the gaze of stars that remember everything. Sonam was a monk who never spoke. He arrived one monsoon morning at the gates of the Tibetan monastery, soaked and barefoot, his eyes dark and wide as ink pools. He bowed once, touched the earth, and said nothing. The monks, puzzled but compassionate, gave him shelter. They clothed him, fed him, and waited. But he never spoke, not a word, not even in prayer. Yet, each night, when others slept and the lamps had been dimmed, he would rise and go to the stone courtyard, where frost kissed the flagstones. There, beneath the full moon, or even clouded sky, he danced, slowly at first, arms weaving in patterns no ritual taught, feet turning in spirals too precise for madness. It was not a performance, it was a language. Those who dared to watch from their windows felt it, the air shifting, the wind pausing. Even time, it seemed, leaned in to listen. The eldest monk, Lama Tenzin, once murmured, "He is not dancing for us. He is reminding the world of something it wants to forget." Years passed. Sonam aged, but his dance did not falter. He remained silent, his only expression that nightly ritual beneath the moon. And then, the disappearances began. Villages from the lower slopes vanished. First, a goatherd, then a widow, then 2 children gathering firewood. No signs of struggle, no footprints, just absence. The monastery sent search parties. They found nothing, only strange indentations in the earth, crescent-shaped too large for human feet, too fluid for animal paws. Fear grew like moss in shadow. Then, one night, Sonam did not dance. He stood motionless in the courtyard, staring northward toward the black cliffs of Chamba Gorge, a place spoken of only in warnings. The monks gathered silently. Lama Tenzin approached, gently. "Sinam, what is?" Sonam raised one arm, pointed toward the cliffs. Then he turned and walked, alone. Lama Tenzin did not stop him, but a boy did follow. Thin and curious, newly initiated, his name was Jigme. He had watched Sonam's dances since childhood, memorizing every step. When Sonam disappeared beyond the monastery gates, Jigme followed at a distance, heart pounding. The trail twisted, grew narrow, then vanished altogether. Yet still, Sonam walked, as if guided by memory older than maps. As night deepened, they reached the edge of Chamba Gorge, a rift in the earth, wide and dark as a wound. Sonam stepped to the edge. There, shadows moved, not cast by moon or flame. They moved of their own will. Tall, flowing, silent. They gathered, curling upward from the gorge like smoke given purpose. Jigme hid behind a boulder, breath frozen. Sonam bowed to the shadows. Then, but this time, his movements were sharper. Each step cut through the silence, like a blade. His arms sliced the air. His feet struck the ground with weight. The shadows responded. They coiled, mimicking his movement, pulsing with strange rhythm. It was not menace. It was memory. A forgotten ritual. Jigme watched, transfixed. Then, without warning, one shadow turned and looked directly at him. The boy gasped. Instantly, the shadows paused. Sonam stilled. Then slowly he turned to Jigme, his eyes not angry, but pleading. He gestured with one hand, "Go." But Jigme stepped forward. "Teach me," he whispered. "Let me help." Sonam studied him for a long moment. Then, wordlessly, he took the boy's hand and placed it on his own heart. In that instant, Jigme saw everything. The ancient bond between dancer and shadow, a pact made in a forgotten time, that when darkness rose to swallow memory, the dancer would call it back into rhythm, to keep the balance. The disappearances were not deaths. They were lost souls drawn by grief, by longing, by pain, pulled into the shadow's sway. Sonam had been calling them home, not fighting the shadows, but guiding them. And now he was tired. The dance must be passed on. Jigme understood. That night, beneath stars so bright they sang, Sonam danced one final time. And when he stopped, the shadows bowed and faded. The monk turned to Jigme, placed the prayer beads in his hand, and vanished into mist. The boy returned alone. But each night, in the courtyard, he danced. The steps were the same. The silence still. The shadows watched from far away, and peace returned to the valley. To this day, if you walk near Darchen Monastery on a clear night, you may see a figure moving under moonlight, slow, graceful, ancient. He does not speak, but he remembers. Yet the mountain is not done whispering. Long ago, when the peaks were young and the skies untamed, a sound came from the heavens. Not thunder, not wind, not the cry of a bird. It was a bell, vast and deep, that rang without hands to strike it. Shepherds fell to their knees. Monks looked up in awe. Children wept without knowing why. They say it echoed through the bones of the Himalayas. A sacred chime, smooth as light, cold as truth. And then it fell, through layers of sky, through ice and ash and silence. A golden bell the size of a stupa, spiraling, glowing, fell from the firmament and disappeared into the hidden valley of Kiailong. That was centuries ago. No one dared enter Kiailong since. Not even the snow leopards walked there. It became a void on the map. Not forbidden, simply forgotten. But then came Tsering, a bell-maker's daughter. She was 17, with soot on her cheeks and calluses on her hands, raised among the quiet clang of bronze and the holy art of resonance. Her father taught her how to temper sound with silence, how to tune the soul of a bell to match the wind's memory. But he also told her stories. Once, he whispered, there was a bell that did not sing. It commanded the sky. It fell where only silence could carry it. Tsering never forgot those words. When her father died, and the village elders burned the last maps of Kiailong, she knew what she had to do. She packed her hammer, her tuning forks, and a single prayer scroll. Then she left alone, for the valley, no one named. The climb was brutal. Storms spoke in tongues. Avalanches rumbled in warning. And yet, Tsering walked on. She followed echoes, whispers of frequencies only bell-makers hear. On the seventh night, beneath a sky riddled with green auroras, she found it. Kiailong, a valley folded in time. Still as a held breath, the trees bowed inward, the air shimmered. At its center lay a crater, and in that crater, half buried in frost and moss, was the bell. It was not made of metal. Its surface pulsed like living pearl. No seams, no inscription, yet it vibrated faintly as if remembering a song long suppressed. Tsering approached. Her tools trembled in her pack. She placed one palm upon it. A hum surged through her bones. She saw, in flashes, visions, skies torn open, celestial beings in robes of starlight. A war between silence and song, and the bell, cast to fall, to sleep, to wait. When she awoke, the sun had not moved. Time did not pass in Kiailong. The bell was not broken. It was sealed. Tsering knew then she must awaken it, but not with force, not with worship, with harmony. She unpacked her tuning forks. One by one, she struck them. C, D, G. The notes rang out, clear but cold. The bell did not stir. Then she sang, softly, a lullaby her father used to hum while polishing temple gongs. A note without name, a tone without time. The bell quivered. Then it rang, not loud, but deep. It rippled the earth. It startled the sun, and something beneath it moved. A hatch. Tsering, trembling, stepped forward. The bell opened. Inside was no chamber, but sky, an entire night sky, swirling, endless, vast, contained within. A spiral staircase led downward, or perhaps upward. It was hard to say. She entered. Each step sang, each breath echoed, and voices met her. Not harsh, not human, but choral. They told her truths not spoken since the stars were born. That the bell was not a weapon, but a warden, a protector of resonance. It had been sent from the source, not heaven, not God, but the first sound, to keep disharmony at bay. But time frayed its purpose. The world forgot how to listen. So the bell was cast down, buried in hush, until one could reawaken it. You, daughter of tone and silence, the voices intoned, have remembered. Then they offered her a choice. Stay, and become the next warden of echoes, ageless, held within the sky bell's chamber, or leave and let the bell ring once more, cleansing the valleys, restoring balance, but sealing forever. She wept. Then she sang one final time, a note so pure it turned wind to light. The bell rose, high above Kiailong. It tolled once, a sound so vast it erased grief from memory. Then it vanished. The valley shifted. Mountains closed. The path home returned, and Tessering. She walked back, but she never spoke again. She built no bells. But sometimes when she stands upon the ridges of the Himalayas, you may hear her hum, and the mountains lean closer. They say the Himalayas are silent, but that is not true. They listen. Every creak of snow, every whisper of wind, every story told by firelight. They gather it, hold it, etch it into ice. For the mountains are not stone. They are memory. And now, they remember you. You, who heard of the child whose shadow fed the ghost monks of Drong. You, who walked with sky-serpents made of cloud and code. You, who followed snow leopards who sang the names of forgotten gods. You, who stood with the girl who awoke the bell that fell from the sky. You were there, not in body, but in breath, in dream, and dreams are the true keepers of legend. For in the villages perched above cliff and cloud, the elders still speak by candlelight. They tell tales not to teach, not to frighten, but to awaken. Children listen with wide eyes and bowls of yak butter tea. Monks nod slowly, their rosaries whispering rhythm. The old ones sit closest to the hearth, eyes closed as if remembering futures that never came. They know. The mountains are not haunted by ghosts. They are haunted by truth. The truth that the world is wider than reason. That wind can carry memory. That sound can wound and heal. That some bells fall from stars, and some yetis are not beasts but watchers. So what happens now? You sleep. You carry the echoes of these tales inside you, curled beneath your ribs like sleeping wolves. You breathe them in your dreams, and if you are quiet, truly quiet, you might still hear it. The low hum beneath all things, a monk's chant beneath the wind, a serpent's sigh through frozen pine, a child's laugh behind the snow, or perhaps a bell ringing once for you to remember.